Hi everyone, this is Garrett with RAIRprotocol, and I'm super excited to show you how you can vibe code a video game quickly and easily using Cursor, and then upload that to GitHub and earn some tokens for doing so. This video will be a 101 style crash course on how you can start totally from zero and end up with something like this kind of cool tariff simulator thing that I built in just a couple of hours using Cursor, and also was able to deploy out onto the open internet under a custom domain name using a service called Netlify, which is super cool. Stay tuned. By the end of this, you will have successfully vibe coded a video game and actually deployed it out onto the open internet totally for free. And then where we're going with this is actually turning it into a Web3 game, which we're not going to do in this tutorial, but we're going to do in the next one. But today we're basically going to just make this prototype here, and then in future videos we can see how we can actually turn that into a Web3 game and start using some calls to the blockchain. But yeah, let's get everything started totally from zero. How did I build this thing? I started over here in Astro Wind. So let's do that as kind of step zero here. So if you just type Astro Wind into Google, this GitHub will probably come up. Make sure, of course, that you have a GitHub account, have connected it, and then, of course, over here in DevDapp and have actually connected your GitHub account into DevDapp so you can get tokens as a reward for making a video game, which is really cool. But yeah, let's jump over into the Astro Wind here, and then what we're going to do is we're going to basically clone this template, and then we'll make a new vibe-coded app. So the very first step here in your GitHub account is to say you want to use this template. And let's create a brand new repository with just a copy paste of this basic Astro Wind site. It's going to look exactly like this. You can think of Astro Wind like a Squarespace type thing, except totally open source, and you can manipulate it. And it's the perfect way to vibe code a very simple front-end game that we can then deploy onto the open internet. So let's create a new repository. And let's name this thing the Hack India tutorial game. And we'll say vibing a new game. And make sure that you set this to public. It's really important that it's set to public so that you can get your points for it when you submit it to DevDapp. Boom, we got a brand new repository here that's going to be a total copy paste of the default Astro Wind site, Hack India tutorial game. Amazing. Now, if you look in the README file, it says, do you want to deploy this thing to Netlify? So we're going to go click this button here, and we're going to go set up our Netlify account. So that way, you're not just making this thing on localhost where nobody's ever able to see it. You can actually make it out on the open internet, which is super cool. So we're going to deploy this default thing to Netlify and then just make sure that it works okay. And then we'll pull that thing down into Cursor and start messing with it. So let's click Deploy to Netlify. Awesome. And then we'll connect our GitHub account. Cool. Now we've binded the GitHub account here, and then let's call this thing something cool like Hack India game. Sweet. So what this is going to do is link the repository that is now inside of your GitHub account with Netlify. And it's going to automatically go and deploy this thing out into this URL here. It just generates like a funny default URL. I'm actually going to go in and change that real quick. You don't have to, but I just like having a real name for these kind of things. So if you dig around in the deployment settings, somewhere here, it's going to ask if you upgrade to customized. It's good to learn how all this stuff works, but we're just going to pretty URLs. Let's see. Domain management. God, good old Control F. Okay. So let us options edit site name, and then we'll call this one Hack India Game. So we got hackindiagame.netlify.app. Awesome. And then let's confirm this thing, hackindiagame.netlify.app. Sweet. Now we got hackindia.netlify.app. And then we'll see over here that we've already published this entire site. So this thing is live out on the internet now. It initialized, it built, etc. And let's just go verify that it does actually work. So we've got hackindia.netlify.app, totally out on the open internet, default Astro Wind site. So now let's do the fun part. Let's turn this thing into a cool game. So again, just like I've got this site over here, RAIRprotocol.info, which is another Netlify site. We've just basically changed it and vibe coded it a bunch so that it says a bunch more information. But we're going to go out and make a new page here. This game, we'll vibe code a game real quick. So how do we do that? We're going to go and download and install Cursor. Make sure that we have Cursor on our system. You can get a 14-day free trial. It's a AI IDE, so you can think of it similar to Visual Studio Code. The reason we like it is, one, there's free trial, and two, it has all of the latest models in it that'll help you vibe code something. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna say clone repository here, and we're gonna go find this repository that we just made. So go into your GitHub account, find this Hack India game here, copy this URL, and then let's come over to Cursor and let's do clone repo, paste this in, bang. And we're gonna wanna save this thing somewhere on your local machine. Doesn't matter if you're on Windows, doesn't matter if you're on Mac, Linux, etc. We're just gonna go put this thing in here, find a repository, and boom. Now we have Hack India game. Let me close out of these other browsers here. Awesome, so this is the default website here. So if I modify or mess with anything and I commit this thing to the main branch in GitHub, it's gonna actually go in, rebuild, and update the website. So just to show how that works is like a step 0, we're gonna say, you know what, actually before we do that, let's put some rules. Let's put just a couple of rules in here. Rules is a very fundamental concept with these AI vibe coding methods. The AI is going to want to just generate a bunch of crazy stuff for you, and you don't want it to do that. You want to give it to rules to very succinctly design and implement what you want it to, rather than going in and rewriting all of your environment variables or doing all sorts of other crazy stuff. So let's go search for Cursor rules on GitHub here. So you just Google it, Cursor rules, and let's go find some rules specific to these Astro Wind websites here. So let's go to Astro, and then let's go back up here, see what this guy's done. So these are all different markdown files with different kind of rules and guidelines to help you out. And again, you don't have to write these things yourself. You could also use a Grok or a Claude or one of these agents to also help you write these rules, but these have been tested and work pretty well. So let's see. Sure, enforce TypeScript. Don't use any other CSS. That's a really important one. Only use the Tailwind CSS. Okay, this sounds great. So I could download this markdown and just put it into the repository, but we'll just be dumb here and use the IDE to help us out. So let's make a new rule. So if we go over here into settings, you can see rules, and then we can see that we have a global rule here that's actually just in my project from before. This rule gives the model context to say, hey, and you can feel free to use this too. Only use frameworks and technologies from the source repository. Do not code in different languages. Do not do basically just use exactly what is in the repository to minimize the amount of dependencies. And now what we're going to do is we're going to add a project specific rule. We're going to call this thing Astro rule. And then we're just going to paste in this markdown here. Yeah, anyway, so now we have an Astro rule. So let's see if that thing helps us. Again, we can make these rules better. You'll find quite quickly here that we are just going to iterate endlessly and try to get it to do what we want it to do. I'm going to add one more rule too, is do not change the, icons. So weirdly, when I was testing this thing before, it kept wanting to make icons that didn't exist. And it would throw dependency errors, and it would keep the thing from compiling properly. Do not use icons. I think it's called tabular. Just use only the existing tabular icons. Do not make any new ones. Just a helpful rule here, because again, you'll see while you're playing with this thing, it'll do weird stuff, and then you'll want to change it. Okay, cool. So we've got this Astro rule in here now. And all right, let's vibe code something. So what we want it to do first is we want it to make a plan And then we want it to implement the plan. So yeah, never just have it start automatically coding. You want to say, okay, so the first one is write a detailed PRD for how to implement a simple 3.js, I don't know, missile defense game. And then make sure the game make sure the game is in its own page, and does not conflict with any functionality from the rest of the website, and then describe a detailed step-by-step process that can then be implemented. Again, this is there's a whole kind of magic and science to writing these things, but you just want to talk to it like a person, but in a way that's very specific. Also down here, these are the different models here. Some of them are a little bit stronger than others. There's a kind of a strategy, I think, to go between the Claude model and the Gemini model. So the Anthropic model, it was previously the strongest one, and now a lot of people think that this Gemini 2.5 Pro model is just as strong, if not a little bit stronger. So sometimes you can do it where one will generate the PRD and then the other one will actually implement it, or if it implements it wrong, you can switch back to the other model. It's almost having two brains. But anyway, we're just going to keep this thing on auto. We don't really care. We just want it to generate a nice PRD. Also, I should note, while this is setting up, that we will want to make sure that the production environment is also set up. So there's going to be all of these dependencies and all of this node npm stuff that needs to be installed on your computer for it to be able to do this kind of work and for you to be able to test it. So let me just do that now, and then just make sure that we both have Git installed, and then make sure that we have npm installed. Yeah, can you verify that? And what I did, I hit plus, and see I've got my old conversation down here, and now I've got this new conversation up here. So we can actually keep separate conversations going. And that's another really important strategy, to not talk to any particular conversation for too long, because it starts to hallucinate and goes crazy. So after you talk to the thing for 7 or 8 times, then switch and make a new chat. And then that will basically help you from generating a bunch of weird code. But yeah, so actually before we implement this PRD, let's just say help verify that Git npm and any other dependencies needed to deploy this project to localhost are installed properly. And it's going to actually go out and generate the commands for you and have full control over the terminal, which is super cool. Yeah, so it looks, let me see, there are some node things missing. Okay, let's check node version. Let's check dependencies. Looks we're missing some of these things. So let's run npm install. Great, the dependencies have been installed, and then let's actually build this thing and run it on localhost and make sure that we can do that. Because then when we modify the thing, we can check it out on localhost, make sure that it's working first, and then git commit to main, and then we can actually see it out on the open internet. So let's see. Update the browser list in the database, npm run build. Amazing. And then actually, let's see if you can npm run dev, which is help run the development server, get this thing out onto localhost. Cool. So let's just see if we can actually see this website, not only out on the open internet, but also out on localhost. Aha, and we have our free, just default thing loaded on localhost. So now when we go make the game, we can go see it on localhost first, and then we'll commit the thing to main, and then we can actually see it out on the internet. So let's go do that. So let's go back to Cursor. We got everything installed properly. Let's We don't need this chat anymore. It's fine. You can see, yeah, your development server is now successfully running. Okay, awesome. Thank you. And let's open up this thing again. And then we're going to go back to the missile defense game PRD. Okay, so what did it say? It said, here's some structures here. We want a game engine, a missile system, a defense system. Okay, it's going to go nuts. It's going to really build a big thing, and I'm doing this live, so I don't know if it's actually going to work the first time or not, but we're going to ask it to please implement. And then if for whatever reason it doesn't work, we can git revert to main. So that's why version control is so darn important for this, and using GitHub is so important, because if it goes out and generates a bunch of crap, then, you know, you're hosed unless you can go and save it. So it's really important that when it works, when it compiles properly, that you go check it into GitHub. Otherwise, it'll go do something crazy and then you won't be able to use it anymore. All right, so then we'll say, yep, plan sounds great. Please implement in the most efficient way possible, where there is a new .astro file another thing I found is if you make the name of the thing too long, whatever.com / a really big name, it also screws up the Astro Wind. So we're going to say at a subdomain or at a subfolder called missile. Okay, this plan sounds great. Please implement in the most efficient way where a new .astro file is where we can play the game. Awesome. And then for this one, let's have Gemini 2.5 Pro do it. Some people say it's 5% better than Claude. Who knows? But let's hit it. Also, I didn't give this thing any context right now. I'll explain how context works in a little bit. So this is the interesting magic part here. Okay, let's start by creating source index.astro, and then let's create the main file, and then let's put this thing out, and then let's see if we can load it. So this part's going to take just a second. Oh, it looks like we need to install React and 3.js. Okay, let's do it. All right, and it's gonna install all the stuff. Sometimes it might find some like CSS styling issues or linter issues, and then it fixes it. But anyways, as it's going, we're just gonna, this is the art of vibe coding, is just, sure, if that's what you want it to do, let's do it. It generates something, and then we refine it, and then we help make it better through this kind of iterative process. So this is really the big step. This is it actually going in and generating the vast majority of the game. And then just to verify that it's doing all of the things that we want it to do, let's see, it looks like it doesn't include it. Edited the Astro config site to add this React thing. Basic setup is complete. There's a new page called missile, which is accessible on /missile. There's a new React component. So we're going to say it modified 3 files here. It made game canvas, index.astro. It added a little line to, and then this config thing. We're going to hit accept all, and hope that the thing works. So the way that we can actually test if it works or not is to go over to localhost here and see if /missile actually works. And it looks like because it changed a bunch of stuff, we're going to need to npm run dev again and get this thing to, oops, excuse me. Even if you misspell it, I think, yeah, okay. npm run dev. So it did all the changes. It's going to restart the local development server. And then we'll see if we were able to successfully one prompt the missile game. And if for whatever reason it doesn't work, we're basically going to dump the error logs in for why it doesn't work, and then iteratively figure it out until it works. Let's see. Aha! I cannot find some module thing with a stack trace. So this is like pretty classic vibe coding. Fortunately, the main site works. That's why you don't want to edit the home page. You want to make a new page here. So we're going to just take this error log and we're going to dump it into a new chat, actually, because we want new context. And then we're going to actually give it some context of saying, can you please look in the missile folder here And then we're just going to paste in this error message here, and we'll get it to see, hey, why is this thing not working? Okay, it looks like there's an issue here, and some sort of pathing thing is wrong. Okay, layout.astro doesn't exist. I found something. And again, it's really going to go nuts trying to fix this for you. And then we'll see if it needs a few iterative loops to actually fix itself. But I'm glad it didn't just work immediately the first time here, because it gives us a chance to show this error loop and how you fix errors when you're vibe coding, which again, is a little bit different than the traditional coding methods. You're more guiding the agent to do the coding rather than necessarily doing the coding yourself. But of course, all of these files that are in here, you could manually edit. So anyway, so we'll see here that now the dev server is running, and now it has a new error here, couldn't find some kind of file. So we're just gonna let this thing really crank through and go nuts and see if we can get it to load. But yeah, it's really trying to fix itself here. And we'll just hang out and watch it go. Aha! And just like that, it did something that compiles properly, which is awesome. Here's localhost/missile. Is this the greatest 3D missile defense game in the world? No. Renders weird and doesn't quite work right. But you know what? It at least compiles, and we've got this cool shape with this little floaty box thing that works. So we're going to declare victory on the missile defense game. Again, the real interesting part of vibe coding is really checking what did it make, what file structures are there, what is this new game canvas component, open up the game canvas component, modify that specifically, give it context. But we're just going to hit accept here, and we're going to end this tutorial on hopefully a high note where this thing not only loads on localhost, but we really want to make sure that it loads on hackindiagame/netlify.app/missile. That's what we're really trying here. And to do that, we need to use Git. And again, Git is so extremely important in vibe coding, because if you're not checking your code in at regular intervals and it goes and does something crazy, then you can't reverse back and revert back to where you were. Don't be intimidated by Git either. The other amazing part of these vibe coding AI assisted workflows is it does all of the heavy lifting for you. So we're going to say, help me commit to main on the remote repository. Cool. So it's going to do all of the Git commands for us, and then that's going to trigger Netlify to build this new code here. So we will run this command, and then we will run this, and then we will do this git origin push main, and now that will put all of our changes out onto GitHub. So let's see how quickly Netlify over here grabs those changes. And we can see that it's immediately starting up and immediately starting to build the new image. So this is the real moment of truth. Just because it compiles properly on localhost does not mean it's actually going to compile properly out on the open internet. So we need to basically build this thing and make sure that it works properly. So let's see if it does. And if it doesn't, again, we take the error logs out of here and we put it back in, and then we go back and forth until it actually loads, not just on, oh, let's see. Why did it fail? It failed because something is outdated. Okay. Again, this is great. We've run it on localhost. Let's take the error messages out of here, put it into cursor, and then try to rebuild it again. So again, there was some kind of issue in Netlify, and it told us we're going to now go do this thing. And it sounds like we need to go into our terminal here And pop out the yes. Do we want to proceed? Yes. Alrighty. And okay, I can run this command for you. Perfect. Proceed with the installation once you've moved it. Please check your terminal. Yes, please proceed. All right, and it's gonna go and find some things that we're missing and fix it for us. Okay. Okay, and now let's make sure that this thing first, npm run dev, always make sure it works first on localhost. If it works on localhost, then we'll commit it to main, and then we'll see if Netlify can deploy it properly. Alrighty, and it looks like, oh, it's running another one. So we already have this old version of Missile Defense up. Let's see if it works on this new port. All right, awesome. The regular website works. Let's see if /missile works. Cool, missile game works on localhost. So let's see if that fixed it. And we'll go back here and say, please commit all of these changes to main on the remote repo. And interestingly, Gemini seems to do a lot more thinking than Claude does. So maybe I'll switch back to Claude for doing these more basic type tasks. Oh, don't commit the cursor file to the repository. Got it to the gitignore file. That's fine. I guess it doesn't want me to add the rules up here. It's fine. No, git add. And we'll push this thing to main. Okay, great. So let's go back over here and go to Netlify. And then we'll see here, this first one worked, the default one. This first pass at trying to get the game running on the internet failed. Let's see if the second pass works. And honestly, if it works or doesn't work, you know what the workflow is. So really, even if this thing fails, we'll still probably cut this video off and then pick it up in the next tutorial where you've had some time to iteratively go back and forth. But that is the full workflow. Just to review, we basically got our GitHub set up. We got our Netlify, free Netlify account set up. We deployed a default Astro Wind website, and then we made a brand new 3JS video game quickly by one prompting a missile defense game. And then we put that thing onto localhost, made sure it ran properly on localhost. And then finally, we put it out onto the open internet so that other people can see it. And that's a full flow. And the next one, what we'll do is we'll basically take this project that you built and then open up a new issue in the DevDapp repository here, and then paste that in so that you can get credit for your working game. But good luck with this flow. There's really an incredible amount of things you can do with making sure the rules are set up properly, making sure the context is set up properly, definitely making sure to check in your code at regular intervals so that if something goes wrong, you can git revert. You also don't really even need to know how to do the git revert commands. You can just type them in and then it'll revert for you. And then you can check the thing working on localhost and then ultimately check the thing working on Netlify. Oh my God, it worked. Ha! Published. Okay. All right, here's the Hack India Netlify game. Let's go to /missile. Ha! And we can see that out on the open internet, we have Hack India game /missile. So that is the entire end-to-end workflow. You should be really proud of yourselves for yeah, being able to do all this, again, all totally free, cursor-free trial, GitHub's free, Netlify's free. And now you've, successfully deployed. I wouldn't say the greatest Web3 game in the world, but certainly a start. And you can take this, modify it, and then make sure that it actually works as a real game. Again, in my example, just to end on, I made this really cool tariff simulator. I recommended this thing called Globe.js that I just used, and now I have this awesome tariff simulator game that I made. So yeah, congratulations, and I will see you in the next video.